A man who has slept through a January night in a tent learns things about staying warm that no architect ever learns in school. And when men like that finally get the keys to a tiny home, they don't decorate it. They run it. Because for years, their life depended on getting the small things right. Today, I'm walking you through 7 things formerly homeless men understand about tiny home living, and then 5 mistakes that quietly ruin tiny homes for people who never had to learn any of this the hard way. And pay attention to number 3, because it decides whether a tiny home stays healthy or slowly rots from the inside while everything still looks fine. Now, why does this matter to you? Because tiny homes have become one of the few honest answers left for people on a fixed income. Maybe you're the retiree selling a house you can no longer afford to heat, the widow downsizing into 400 square feet, or the daughter putting a small cabin in the backyard for dad. Either way, the best teachers on this subject are not the influencers with the fancy lofted bedrooms. They are the men who lived in shelters, cars, and tents, and who treat a warm, dry, 400 square foot home like a palace. So let's get into what they know. And stay for the 5 mistakes, because the last one has nothing to do with the house at all. Number 1. You heat the person, not the space. A man I'll call Ray, who spent 3 winters outside in Ohio, will tell you that warmth is something you wear and something you sleep in, long before it's something you pay for. In a shelter or a tent, nobody hands you a thermostat. You learn that a wool blanket holds heat even when it's damp. You learn that 3 thin layers beat 1 thick coat. You learn to warm the bed, not the room, with a hot water bottle wrapped in a towel at your feet.
Then you can take this, put it inside of your sleeping bag with you, and you have a nice warm object to hold on to all night long.
Move that thinking into a tiny home and the savings are remarkable. A 1,500-watt space heater costs roughly 20 cents an hour to run at average electric rates, and it can take a well-built tiny house from cold to comfortable in 15 minutes. So there is no reason to run heat all night. Men who came off the street sleep in a cool room under serious bedding, wake up, heat the space quickly, and their winter utility bill is a fraction of what their neighbors pay in a full-sized house. Compare that to what the rest of us do. We heat every corner of the home to 72 degrees around the clock, including rooms nobody is standing in. And then we wonder where the pension money went. The men who learned warmth the hard way treat heat like food. You use what you need when you need it, and you never let it leak away from you. That single habit, all by itself, can save a person on Social Security hundreds of dollars every winter. Number 2. Everything you own must earn its place. For a man who was homeless, his first tiny home was a backpack. Whatever went in that pack, he carried on his shoulders all day, every day. So every object faced a brutal question. Do you earn your weight? A second pair of dry socks earned it. A cast iron pan, as much as he might love one, did not. When that man moves into a tiny home, the question never leaves him. He runs a 1 in, 1 out rule without even thinking about it. A new jacket comes in, an old jacket goes to someone who needs it. And because of that, his 300 square feet feels open and calm. While other people's tiny homes feel like storage units with a bed wedged inside. This is where downsizing seniors struggle the most, and it's completely understandable. A lifetime of memories doesn't fit in a tiny home, and nobody is saying your late husband's watch or your grandmother's Bible has to earn its keep. The men I'm describing keep sentimental things too, a photograph, a folded flag, a letter. But they keep the few that matter most, and they let the rest go with a clear conscience. Nobody is telling you to own nothing, but in a small space, every single object is either serving you or crowding you, and there is no third option. Number 3. Moisture is the silent killer. This is the one I told you about, and it's the difference between a tiny home that lasts 30 years and one that's ruined in 3. A man who has slept in a tent knows something strange. You can zip everything shut, seal out the wind, and still wake up soaked because your own breath put a pint of water into the air overnight and it condensed on the cold walls around you. Cold and wet, he'll tell you, kills faster than cold and dry. A tiny home works exactly like that tent, just slower. 2 people breathing, 1 pot of soup simmering, 1 hot shower, and you have poured water vapor into a tiny sealed box. That moisture finds the coldest surface it can, the window glass, the metal corner, the wall behind the couch, and it settles there day after day. Then one afternoon you pull the dresser away from the wall and find black mold climbing the paneling. The men who lived outside never let it get that far. They crack a window even in winter. They run the vent fan every time they cook or shower. They pull furniture a few inches off the walls so air can move behind it, and they wipe the windowsills every morning like it's brushing their teeth. To them, moving air is what keeps a shelter alive, and they treat it with that kind of respect. And here's the detail that everyone misses. A slightly cooler home with dry air feels warmer than a sealed warm home with wet air. Your body knows the difference even when the thermostat doesn't. Number 4. Location decides everything before you unpack a single box. Ask a man who slept outside how he chose where to bed down, and he'll give you a checklist most homebuyers never think of. High ground, so rain runs away from you instead of underneath you. Something solid at your back to block the wind. Morning sun to warm you and dry things out. And a route to water, food, and help that doesn't take everything out of you. Now watch what happens when people buy tiny homes. They spend 2 years obsessing over the floor plan and about 2 hours thinking about where the thing will actually sit. Then the home gets parked in a low spot that puddles every time it rains, facing away from the sun, with the door opening straight into the north wind. The house was perfect. The placement ruined it. The formerly homeless man walks the land first. He looks at where water flows, where wind comes from, where the sun rises. And just as important, he measures the distance to a grocery store, a pharmacy, and a hospital, because he has lived what it means to be far from help. For anyone over 60 considering a tiny home, that last part is the whole ball game. A beautiful cabin 40 minutes from the nearest doctor is a gamble, and he already knows better than to take it. Number 5. The daily reset is what makes a small space livable. Here's something nobody tells you about tiny living. A full-sized house forgives you. You can leave dishes in the sink and laundry on the chair, close the door, and live around the mess for a week. A tiny home forgives nothing. 1 unmade bed, 1 dirty pan, and 1 dropped coat, and the entire home is disordered. Not 1 room. All of it. Men who came through shelters and camps already carry the answer, because in those places, keeping your small area squared away was how you kept your dignity and often how you kept your spot. Your bunk made, your bag packed, your boots together. Many of these men are veterans, and the military planted the same habit even deeper. So every morning in their tiny home, they run a quiet reset that takes 10 minutes. Bed made. Dishes washed and put away, floor swept, everything returned to its home, and they'll tell you something that sounds backwards until you live it. That 10-minute routine became the most comforting part of their day. When your whole world is 300 square feet, order is peace, and the reset is how you make peace every single morning. People who skip it don't fail slowly. Their tiny home becomes unbearable within weeks, and they blame the square footage when the real problem was the habit they never built. Number 6. The bed is the heart of the home, and the cold comes from below. If you gave a homeless man $1 to spend on comfort, he would spend it under his body, not over it. That's the great secret of sleeping outside. You can pile 5 blankets on top of yourself and still shiver all night because the ground is pulling heat out of you from underneath. The men who slept in doorways and under bridges learned to put cardboard, foam, anything at all between themselves and the cold surface below. Campers even have a number for this. They call it R-value. And experienced cold weather sleepers will tell you the pad under you matters more than the blanket over you. Tiny homes, campers, and converted vans all share that same weakness. The floor sits close to the cold air, and the chill rises straight up through the mattress. So the men who know better build the bed first and build it seriously. A proper foam layer under the mattress, the bed positioned away from the coldest wall, warm, breathable bedding on top, wool if they can get it. And there's a reason they treat the bed like the foundation of everything else. In a home that small, if you sleep badly, there's nowhere to escape your own exhaustion. Good sleep is what makes the tight quarters feel cozy instead of confining. Get the bed right and a tiny home feels like a nest. Get it wrong and it feels like a cell. They learned that distinction in the hardest classroom there is. Number 7. Your neighbors are your infrastructure. This one surprises people the most. You'd think men who survived the street did it by being tough and self-reliant, and they are. But sit down with any of them and they'll tell you the truth. Nobody survives alone. The man who made it through the winter was the one who knew which church served breakfast on Tuesdays, which security guard would look the other way, which other men would watch his things while he slept. His real wealth wasn't in his pack, it was in the people who knew his name. Carry that into tiny home living, and you understand why the happiest tiny home dwellers are almost never the ones parked alone in the woods. They're in small communities and friendly parks where one neighbor has a generator, another has a truck, another checks on you when your lights don't come on by 8. One shared ride to town, one borrowed ladder, one person noticing you're not okay. For an older person living small, that web of people is the safety net. The men who lived without walls figured out that community is the one utility you cannot install later and cannot buy at any price. You build it slowly, by showing up, by being useful, by knowing names, and they never take it for granted again. Now, before we get into the 5 mistakes, I need to be honest with you about something. There are things I simply cannot say on YouTube. Advice about where a person can legally sleep in their car, how to handle certain encounters, which programs quietly hand out money and housing help, the kind of street-tested survival knowledge these men actually gave me. If I put it in this video, the channel would be gone by morning. So I put all of it into a short ebook called The Veteran's Blueprint. It's written for people who are running out of money, people already sleeping rough, and for anyone trying to help a person who is. If that's you or someone you love, the link is in the description below, or just scan the QR code on your screen right now. And while you're down there, hit subscribe, because I share lessons like these every single week. So those are the 7 things they know. But what these men warned me about next was just as valuable, because they've watched newcomers pour their life savings into tiny homes and lose everything. These are the 5 mistakes they see over and over. Mistake number 1. Buying too big and financing the dream. The whole point of a tiny home is freedom from the mortgage, yet people keep walking into dealerships and signing loans on $80,000 custom builds with lofted ceilings and farmhouse sinks. They haven't escaped the trap. They've shrunk it and put wheels on it. Now they own a tiny home and a payment, and when the fixed income gets tight, that payment eats them exactly like the old mortgage did. The men who lived with nothing do it differently. They buy small, used, and paid for. A 10-year-old park model, a modest second-hand build, something a person can own outright on day 1. It might need paint, It might need a weekend of repairs, but nobody can take it away. And they'll tell you plainly that a paid-for roof you own beats a beautiful roof you owe on every day of the week. If you remember nothing else from this list, remember that owning outright is the entire prize. Mistake number 2, ignoring the legal side until the knock on the door. Here's a heartbreaking scene that plays out constantly. A retired couple spends their savings on a lovely tiny house, parks it on their daughter's property, and 6 months later, a county officer is standing in the driveway explaining that it can't stay there. Zoning rules, minimum size requirements, restrictions on full-time living in an RV. The home was legal to buy and illegal to live in, and nobody told them. Men who were homeless know this world intimately because they spent years being moved along from every place they tried to rest. They learn to find out what's allowed before they settle, not after. So they do the unglamorous homework first. A call to the county zoning office. A conversation with the tiny home community about their rules. Confirmation in writing when possible that the spot is legal for year-round living. It's boring, it costs nothing, and it's the difference between a home and a very expensive problem sitting in a driveway. Mistake number 3, sealing the home so tight it can't breathe. This one comes from a good instinct gone wrong. New tiny homeowners think about heating bills, so they seal every gap, spray foam every cavity, weather strip every edge until the home is airtight as a thermos. Then they live inside it, breathing, cooking, and showering, and remember what we said in number 3. All that moisture now has nowhere to go. For the first year, everything seems fine. The home is warm and the bills are low, but inside the walls, water vapor is condensing where they can't see it. Builders have a name for it: interstitial condensation, water forming inside the wall cavity itself. By the second winter, there's a smell they can't find and a soft spot in the floor by the door. Repair crews will tell you about opening up 2-year-old tiny homes and finding the framing black with rot. The men who slept in tents shake their heads at this because they knew from night 1 that a shelter has to breathe. Tight is good. Airtight, without proper ventilation, is a slow demolition you paid extra for. Mistake number 4, depending on gadgets you can't fix yourself. Modern tiny homes come loaded with clever systems: solar arrays with digital controllers, composting toilets with fans and sensors, tankless heaters, phone-controlled everything. It all works beautifully in the demonstration video. Then one hard freeze in January, one fried circuit board, and a 70-year-old woman is alone in a dark, cold box waiting 2 weeks for a specialty part. The men who survived outside trust simple things for a simple reason. Their lives used to depend on gear that could not be allowed to fail, and when it did fail, they had to fix it themselves with what was on hand. So in their tiny homes, you'll find systems a person can understand and repair with hand tools, a wood stove they can see into, a plain propane heater as backup, water they can access even when the pump quits. They're not against technology. They just never let comfort depend on anything they can't fix on a Tuesday with no help coming. In a tiny home, especially for an older owner, that rule is worth more than any gadget. Mistake number 5. Moving somewhere cheap and ending up somewhere alone. The land listings are seductive. 5 acres in the middle of nowhere for the price of a used car. And people take the bait because the math works on paper. What the math doesn't show is the first winter, when the nearest human being is 9 miles away, the nearest doctor is 50, and the phone doesn't ring for days at a time. Ask the men who were homeless what actually breaks a person, and they won't say hunger or cold first. They'll say being invisible, being somewhere nobody knows you exist. They endured the worst loneliness there is, and they will never voluntarily choose it again, no matter how cheap the acreage. So when they pick a spot for their tiny home, they take the smaller lot near town, the friendly park with the potluck on Sundays, the space behind a family member's house, because they know the real price of cheap land. You pay for it in the one currency that matters most when you're older, which is people who would notice if something happened to you. So, look at these 12 lessons together, and you'll see they're really one lesson. The men who lost everything learned exactly what a home is actually for. It keeps you warm, dry, and rested. It stays yours. And it sits close to people who care whether you wake up tomorrow. Everything else, the square footage, the finishes, the farmhouse sink, is decoration. That's why a man who once slept under a bridge can be genuinely rich in 300 square feet, while people in big houses lie awake doing math at 3 in the morning. He measured wealth in warmth and peace, and by that measure, he finally has everything. If you or someone you love is closer to the edge than you'd like, remember, the Veteran's Blueprint is in the description below, along with that QR code on screen. And next week, I'm breaking down how retirees are living well on Social Security alone with the exact monthly numbers. Subscribe so you don't miss it, because that one might change how you see your own budget. I'll see you there.